Welcome to my channel. My name is Jimmy, and today we have another interesting story. I won't keep you. Let's get started. Story 1 from user Avendek. My grandmother is the world's sweetest person and had a horrible woman as a mother. Her father, though, was incredible. She always talks about how I remind her of him, the small and sweet things they did together, and how much she misses him. Recently, she told me that her mother would tell her, "He isn't your real father, you know," whenever she felt like hurting my grandmother some more. This continued until the day she died, and her father escaped her mother's abuse and never spoke to my grandmother again. My Nana doesn't blame him at all and still loves him very much to this day. She decided to go on Ancestry because she said that she needs to know before she dies, although she said it wouldn't change anything about how she felt about him. Turns out, her mother was right. My grandmother found her biological family and loves to talk about her French heritage that she's now learning about. To this day, she doesn't hold anything against her non-biological dad. He took care of my grandmother when her mother wouldn't, knowing it wasn't his child. He loved her, soothed her, and nurtured her through as if she was his own, and he made sure thought she was. He saved my grandmother's spirit, he'll tell you that much. He helped shape her into the most miraculous human being I've ever met. To this day, I'll always refer to him as my great-grandfather, and if I have a son, I'll be naming him after him. This story always gets me teary-eyed, but the thought of Alistair, my Nana's pretend dad, always makes me really happy. I know it makes her happy too. Story 2 from user Teal Housewife. My sister did 1 through 23 and me maybe 3 or 4 years ago now, and discovered we had a cousin. His profile was public because he had been adopted and was hoping to reconnect with his birth family. We were able to figure out that he would have belonged to my dad's sister. My sister wasn't sure how to bring it up with her, so she asked my dad if he could talk to his sister about it, but he dragged his feet a bunch, so my sister eventually had to let her know. It turns out she got pregnant in college back in the 60s, and the father bailed, so she went to stay with a friend across the country, had the baby, and put him up for adoption. She ended up telling her parents years later, and they were like, "Oh, okay, thanks for telling us," and never brought it up again because they are extremely repressed. She had also told her husband prior to their marriage, and when their kids were teenagers, they had been filled in as well, so it wasn't a huge family secret. It was just one the extended family didn't really know about. Anyway, my sister put our new cousin and our aunt in touch. He had done the DNA test, hoping to learn more about his medical history, but also because he wanted to let his birth parents know that they made a great decision, and he had an amazing adoptive family, and had had a really happy life, and had no bad feelings towards them. That was a huge relief for my aunt, because she had always worried about that. The two of them have built a great relationship now and see each other often. I haven't met him in person yet, but several of my family members have, including my dad. My aunt and dad and grandma have all become close to his adoptive parents too, as well as our cousin's wife and kids. His birthday was actually day before yesterday. I'm Facebook friends with him and saw it there. Story 3 from user Grave Girl. Found out that my brother is only my half-brother. Our parents, well, who we thought were both our parents, were never married. But my mom has insisted my whole life that my dad is my brother's dad. He never acknowledged my brother, he did me, claiming that the man my mom was living with at the time was probably his father. My mom has always said the other fellow was simply her roommate. Given that my dad was an alcoholic and chronic liar, and our mom has never been someone to lie to make herself look better, and that my brother looked pretty much exactly like my dad in an old army photo, we believed our mom. So my brother gets an Ancestry DNA test done, and he's got no German ancestry at all, even though our dad's side of the family is super German. But, hey, things happen. DNA comes out weird. Then I got a test done, and he showed up as a close match, but with 99% certainty a half-sibling. So we dig into this a little more, and my half-sister from my dad's side's son shows up on mine, but not his. She's there too now, only on mine. All the cousins on my dad's side showed up on mine, but not his. The relatives we have in common are our mom's family. So we're left with the certainty that our mom has been wrong all these years. Again, I swear to you that this woman does not lie to make herself look better. It just doesn't occur to her. I mean, I was in elementary school when she told me I was the result of a drunken attempt to get her ex-boyfriend to leave his wife for her. This woman is really a lot more honest than she should be by all rights. So we've actually decided not to raise the issue with her. Either she's gone 50 years not knowing the actual father of her oldest child, or there's enough trauma there to make an unusually honest woman lie. This is just one more small bit of weirdness in our family anyway. My brother's legally my uncle. Story 4 from user Gordon Shumway 69. My husband and I did Ancestry DNA because I am very into genealogical research and was hoping it would break down some roadblocks in my research. My husband gets a message from a guy that is a full cousin match. I manage both our tests on my account, so I was on my husband to respond to the guy because I hate when people do not respond to me. He was slow with it, so I took over after his first response. It turned out the guy was searching for his biological father for more than 35 years, and matching with my husband was the closest he has ever been to an answer. I told him that I would help him find his father and to give me 2 days. I had to go through my husband's large family to narrow things down. Fortunately, there were a few cousins that had also done Ancestry DNA, so I was able to rule a few uncles out. I narrowed it down to 2 and felt it was one that was married with his own children, so I had to approach it delicately. I spoke to his aunt and asked for wedding dates of her family so I could add it to my tree. I determined that the conception date was before their marriage, so I was somewhat clear in regards to that because they were on a break at that time. I eventually determined who the father was. I called his aunt and said I had to speak with her about something delicate. She is an awesome person, and I knew she would understand, but my husband was freaking out and thought this would end their marriage. I knew it would not. She was awesome about it and was ready to welcome her new stepson into her family. When we broke the news to his uncle, he did not remember the mother at all. It was back in the early 80s, and he was in the Navy at the time, so he could have been out partying, and that is how things happen. He was so upset because he never knew he had this son out there, because he would have raised him. He was really sad about that. I gave him his son's phone number, and now they talk all the time. A few years back, his son and his adoptive parents came to town, and we welcomed them to the family. His adoptive mother hugged me and thanked me. She cried and told me that he really needed this, because his bio mom had told him several possible men over the years, and when he reached out to those men, they rejected him and hurt him even more. It was a really nice moment and a happy ending. I say that the universe sends these people to me. The morning after I solved that mystery, I got a message from a guy that was a cousin match to me. He said he had been searching for his biological parents since he found out he was adopted after his parents passed, and he was clearing out their papers more than 20 years ago. I said, "Of course I will help you, but I am a student and can only do this research on my school breaks." Well, after lots of research and a few adoption research seminars, I solved that mystery and gave this man peace after many years of searching. He now has a relationship with his nieces and nephew, and it makes me smile. I was also able to give him the family health history that impacts him. As I said, the universe sends these people to me to help, so I have several more crazy stories, but I will save that for later if people are interested. I hope that I continue to have the opportunity to help people on their quest for the truth. I have this skill that can be used to help others, so why wouldn't I do just that? Story 5 from user QPGMR. Not actually DNA, but related. Obligatory not me but my co-worker, Bob. Very proud Polish heritage guy, unusual Polish name, plays accordion, brought in great food back when we had potluck days at work. This is all pre-DNA testing. Bob made a habit of trying to find relatives by looking up his name in phone books at the library before he went on any trips. We had to go to KC on business, and he found people with his unusual last name in a suburb. He called them, all seemed well, and he decided to skip a day of the conference to meet them. Bob and I are waiting outside the hotel. He was super excited and wanted me to meet them, and a big pickup shows up and a pair of black guys climb out and look confused. As does Bob. Introductions are made a bit awkwardly. Everyone takes a breath and realizes that all three guys are practically identical. They could be photo negatives of each other. They even had on baseball caps with the same truck logo. Well, they decided to roll with it, and Bob left with them. The next morning, he tells me they took him to a big family BBQ, complete with accordions, beer, and singing "Who Stole the Kishka?" Seriously. The upshot was that his great-great-time's ex-uncle fought for the Union in the Civil War and didn't go home to New York. He proceeded across the US, working his way west, sharing rich Polish traditions and DNA with a variety of ladies along the way. Bob's been back to KC 4 times in the last 30 years for reunions. His family was startled the first time, but when greeted with "Na zdrowie," or something phonetically similar, and a Slivovitz push into your hand, they felt right at home. Story 6 from User Matrix. I found a first cousin that no one was aware of. It wasn't clear who her father was, but from the work she had done on her family tree, I could narrow it down to 3 of my uncles, father's brothers. Actually, I think the level of consanguinity could have supported other theories. Like she could have been the daughter of an unknown half-sister or something like that. It turned out she is older than me though, which I didn't know at first. I reached out to her via the family tree app, and we started emailing one another. After she trusted me enough, she revealed that my Uncle Jay was her father. He had no idea, or rather, as a very young man, there had been a pregnancy scare during a short-term relationship, and at the time, like 60 years ago, he had become convinced that it was impossible for him to be the father, and that was that. Since nothing came of it, he had let it go entirely. In reality, my unknown cousin's biomom put her up for adoption upon birth. The adopting mother read the attorney's documents upside down across the desk as she signed the papers and memorized the biomom's name. Decades later, she told my cousin her real mother's name, and my cousin developed a relationship with her biomom as an adult. As my cousin neared retirement age, her adoptive parents and biomom had passed away. Her father, my uncle, was and is still alive. She wanted to meet him, but had never quite got the nerve to show up and say, "Hey, I'm your daughter you don't know anything about." She also has 3 half-siblings, my other cousins from Uncle Jay. One time she got all the way to his door and knocked on it, but he wasn't home. So, to make my long story a little longer, I conspired with my new cousin to introduce her to her father. I drove a few hundred miles to visit Uncle Jay and tell him what was going on. He immediately realized the story must be true, especially as I was able to supply the biomom's name. We all met at a diner in the morning. The resemblance was striking right away. We all love my new cousin, and she has been an important part of Uncle Jay's life ever since. Story 7 from user Miss Pippi. My grandpa knew he was adopted, but didn't know much about his bio family. He did have a few very specific details. There was a set of twin girls, for example, 1 redhead and 1 blonde, and he knew the names of one of their adoptive parents. His adoptive parents knew the other adoptive family, and he even met one of his biological brothers briefly when he was very young. I tracked down one of the twins through her adoptive parents' names and slowly pieced together other siblings. 14 in total. At least 4 were adopted out, but many were kept by the bio parents. My grandpa isn't one of them. My DNA doesn't match these siblings' DNA. So it's anyone's guess where he came from, or why his parents lied about who his biological mother was. My guess is that they were protecting some woman who got pregnant and needed to keep it a secret. It was the late 1920s. And since they knew this other woman had had many children, and had given some of them up for adoption, they used her as a scapegoat. But until I can find a DNA match, it's impossible to say. Thanks to everyone who watched to the end. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.